What is going on, everybody? This is James, and thanks again for joining me for another Borderless podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the college debt bubble. This is something that I've been writing about and talking to people about forever. I can't believe that it's still going on at the level that it is. It seems to be out of control. All these people going to college, it seems to me I have no business doing that, and sometimes they have no better prospects. Well, what I did today was I brought on a professor who has been studying this for a while, and we're going to go into depth about that. First of all, I wanted to mention one of our affiliates who can help you if you want to live a borderless lifestyle yourself. I know that one of the big obstacles for people wanting to live a borderless lifestyle is finding a way to make an online income once they quit their job and they move away. One proven method is to start an online business that can earn you money and from anywhere that has an internet connection. Thousands of location-independent digital nomads are living the borderless lifestyle in this way. If you're thinking of starting an online business, we've interviewed several times and recommended the services of Pete Sisco, who has made his entire living online for over 15 years. If you want a comprehensive, personalized mentoring on how to find a business that is right for you and that can deliver the level of income you need, visit our information page at borderlessblog.com/Pete. Pete's Services is not a video course or a one-size-fits-all program about some new fad that is making money right now. It's direct one-on-one mentoring to build a lucrative, durable online business suited to your specific interests, goals, and skills. So go to borderlessblog.com/Pete and you'll get some free information there. All right, without further ado, then let's talk to my guest here and we'll figure out some more about this college debt situation. Let's go.
Welcome to the Borderless Podcast, your guide to traveling, investing, and living beyond borders, where we talk about living the life that you want to live, where you want to live it.
Welcome to the Borderless Podcast. This is James GUzman, and today I'm joined by Antony Davies. We're going to be talking about the college debt situation. I've written a few articles for my blog about it, and he has written several articles. He is a scholar at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, and is also an associate professor of economics at Dukaine University. So, first of all, thanks for joining us on the Borderless Podcast, Antony.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay. So you have been writing about the college debt bubble. You're working in the university system. When was it exactly that you saw some kind of, some things that caused you concern as far as what's going on there?
Well, I mean, of course, rising tuition has been a thing that people talk about for over a decade now. And it's there. I didn't pay too much attention to it. What really got my attention is the bursting of the housing bubble. In digging into the question of what happened to cause the bubble to inflate in the first place and then finally burst, and in doing that research, I came to the disturbing conclusion that the federal government's role in the inflation of the housing bubble is almost duplicated exactly in the inflation of the college loan bubble. So the same sorts of errors that the government made. For example, I should back up a moment because it's popular to blame the housing bubble and crash on the greedy bankers.
Right.
And the way I describe it is, well, the bankers didn't suddenly become greedy in 2008, right? They were greedy before, they're greedy after. The question is, what changed to cause this bubble? And one of the major things that changed, actually several things, all involved government intervention in the mortgage markets. One was the Federal Reserve holding interest rates at historically low levels for a long period of time. That makes it cheaper to borrow, and of course, the cheaper it is to borrow, the more people will borrow, and you got borrowing for housing. Similarly, you're getting borrowing for college education. Another thing that happened is the federal government, probably around the 1970s or maybe early 1980s, decided that the key to success in life was owning your own home. And therefore, Congress then started instituting policies that would encourage people to own their own homes. Of course, the causality there is backward, right? It's not that owning a home leads to success, it's that being successful leads to owning a home. But nonetheless, Congress enacted a whole suite of policies to encourage banks to loan, to extend more mortgages to low-income to high-risky borrowers. The federal government is doing the same thing with the student loan market. encouraging banks to make loans to students who, the analog to high risk, low income are students who are, lesser talented academically, that engage, that study higher risk majors. Majors don't have a higher probability of leading to jobs, these sorts of things. So in both cases, the government is encouraging the market to extend loans to these people who otherwise the market would be reticent to lend to.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Then finally, the big kicker is this. In the mortgage market, the federal government directed Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. These are Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are government-owned, government-founded and owned corporations. The government directed Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to intervene in the mortgage market. Specifically, it told Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, go to the banks, buy up the mortgages that they have, thereby injecting more cash into the system. So the game is we buy up the mortgage from the bank gets our money, the bank can then turn around and lend that money to more people, and so we get more mortgages. And what it did, this policy, two things. One, it turned the banks into basically used car salesmen, right? They were no longer lenders. They were intermediaries. It was the federal government that was the ultimate lender, right? The banks were just a pass-through. That's one thing it did. The second thing it did that was incredibly disturbing is that it takes this mortgage, which is actually two things. It's return, the interest that the banks get, and its risk, the possibility that the person doesn't pay back, right? These two things are counteracting forces, right? It's what encourages, on the one hand, the bank to make the loans. On the other hand, causes the bank to be cautious about how much it lends, right? The return and the risk. By intervening the way it did, what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac did was to split these two things apart. And it said to the banks, you keep the return, the risk we'll put on the backs of the taxpayers. So banks did what anyone would do. They just started lending money out to anybody because there was no risk to them. The federal government was going to take the risk. That same kind of thing the federal government did as well in the student loan market. And this is a piece that people are largely not aware of. In the Affordable Care Act, there's language that sets up the Department of Education in the student loan market to be the same sort of entity that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were in the mortgage market. So now we've got the federal government again having this entity that's encouraging banks to loan to students regardless of risk. And the federal government, that is the taxpayers, are going to be the ones that have to that end up holding the bag for the loans that go bad. So where does this leave us in the end? Where it leaves us is the federal government has done in the student loan market the exact same things that it did in the housing market to encourage the bubble there. And we're getting, no surprise, a bubble in the college loan market.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm right on board with what you're talking about. And it's something that's been very obvious to me for a number of years, and it's continued to perpetuate. And I've always been thinking about what is it going to be that's going to be kind of the tipping point, because it's just going to be at one point some people wake up and they decide, oh wait a minute, it's not worth it for me to get a bachelor's degree for $150,000 or whatever, and there stops being new entrants into the market, which then I guess the smaller universities would start to fail, and I'm not sure what would happen in the end. But how do you see that? What do you think would be the catalyst for people to kind of wake up to what's been going on?
That's the right question to ask. And again, for an analogy, we can look to the housing market. The catalyst in the housing market was, for a long time, housing prices kept going up and up and up. And so, people were very happy, borrow tons of money that you can't afford to buy this house, but that's okay because 5 years from now, the house will be even worth more. So you can sell it, you can pay off the loan and walk away with a nice profit. What burst the housing bubble was all of a sudden, the price got high enough that people looked around and realized they're not going to be able to resell their houses for more than they bought them for. And all of a sudden then people stopped looking to buy houses and the price crashed. Same kind of thing is going to happen in the student loan market. It's coming up very quickly, which is employers who for decades have looked to a college degree as a sign of an educated person, right? So you've got a college degree. I, as an employer, can kind of take it on faith that you've gone through the hoops, you've shown that you can work hard, you can do what's necessary, you've learned some stuff, and you're the kind of person then that I want working for me. So the college degree became a signal of the value, of the intellectual value of the person. What's happening now is that colleges are admitting, just like the banks would loan to anybody that came along, colleges are admitting any student that comes along, regardless of whether that student actually can perform at a college level. Now, of course, the college in the past would say, here's a student that can't perform, we're going to fail you out. Now the colleges can't do that because they've come to rely on this income of the students. So what we do is we set up, extra services on the side to help the student get through. For the younger faculty, particularly at smaller schools, we'll put pressure on them. Don't fail the students because every student is worth a tremendous amount of money to us. And so consequently what happens is we end up graduating students who actually can't perform well. Now, when those students start to hit, as they're doing now, they're starting to hit the job market, employers look at them and realize all of a sudden the college degree perhaps doesn't signal what we thought it signaled. It doesn't indicate that this is necessarily a well-educated, hard-working person. And just like people stop buying houses when they realize the prices are going to keep going up, employers are going to stop hiring people on the basis of college degree. And all of a sudden you're going to see the price implode. Students who are kind of marginal are going to say, what is the point of paying for a college degree when I can go get vocational training or job skills or something outside of academia, and the employer will regard me just as well as he does someone who has a 4-year degree.
Right. I think I saw an article about three months ago or something like that. It was Ernst & Young, I believe, that said that they're no longer requiring a college degree.
Right.
I think, are there any other companies that you know of that have announced that?
No, I'm not aware of any others, but
Okay.
I would not at all be surprised that we're going to see more and more of that.
Yeah. In 2008, I got caught up in the housing bubble, and I know another number of other people that did as well. And a lot of people that I knew, especially around my age, in order to keep with the credit that they had going on, the credit cards or their apartments and the car note and all this stuff that they had. I know people personally that they went back to college, and because that was where the next gravy train was, right? And so they just go and they can get a free loan here, and they were using that money, a lot of it, to pay off some of their old loans.
Yeah.
So it's just continuing to grow. I was just checking it before this interview. It's now at over $1.3 trillion in student loan. Looks like $2,726 per second is being added.
Yes.
So it's
It's even, there's something that's disturbing more so about college loans than about the housing market, which is, in the housing bubble days, if you bought a house that you couldn't afford and you had to declare bankruptcy, you had this tremendous debt, the mortgage on the one side, but on the other side, you had an asset, that's that house. And hopefully you can sell it off to recoup a significant chunk of the money that you owe. But that's not the case with a college degree. With a college degree, you walk out with, $80,000, $100,000 in debt. There is no asset on the other side that you can resell. And furthermore, under current law, you cannot discharge student loans in bankruptcy.
Right.
So you can declare bankruptcy, which normally wipes out all your debt, but it doesn't wipe out student loans. So in a real sense, we're taking the a large swath of the population, the students who are being drawn into college that probably would succeed better outside of college. We're drawing them in, we're loading them down with debt that they're never going to be able either to repay or to discharge in bankruptcy. In a way, we're kind of creating a whole generation of people who are going to live in servitude.
Right. Well, I can't remember the exact stats right now, but last time I looked, I think it was like 26% of student loans are in delinquency right now. So I think a lot of people are not going to be paying, and I think there's going to be a big club of people that don't pay and then complain that it was predatory lending or something, and they get bailed out. I don't know, but
yeah, I'm glad you said that because. Yeah. What we're going to hear about 5 to 10 years down the road, you're going to start to hear politicians talking about the greedy college presidents, just like they talked about the greedy bankers, in the same kind of rhetoric. And of course, all the fingers are going to point to the market when in fact the real culprit was the government setting up a set of incentives that are just perverse.
Yeah, of course. So, it's tough for people, I think, now, especially young people thinking about going to college because, obviously there are things that you do need to go to college for if you want to be a medical student or a lawyer or something. There's a number of things. And, funny enough, just yesterday, so I'm here in Mexico right now, And just yesterday, I was having somebody, I was talking to, it was a hairstylist. She was cutting my hair. And she said that her brother was going to the United States in order to get, or she's going to Southern California in order to get, they wanted to enroll in a college there in Southern California. And I was like, no, don't do that. I think it was a business school or something like that. So there's still, it's even till today, 2016, there still is this idea that, that's some of the best colleges. You need to go there. And once you get a degree there, no matter, just take on the debt and that you're going to get this great job when you get out. I mean, so you working at one of these universities, how have you seen job prospects for people once they do graduate with these types of degrees?
Well, that's a good question, because I think what is happening is that people are no longer, or they're starting no longer to think about a college degree, and instead they're thinking about college majors, and those are very different animals. Depending on what college major you select. Now, of course, I'm in economics, which is one of the majors that has tremendous value in the marketplace. This, what we call the STEM majors: science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Any majors that deal with those subjects tend to be very well worth the investment. Majors that don't deal with those subjects tend not to be worth the investment. And you can go down the list to, I think the bottom list is something like family studies, that if you calculate the net present value, it's actually negative. That is, you end up poorer with a family study major than you do with just a high school diploma.
Right. Yeah. So, if people are wanting to get in business for themselves, entrepreneurship, and or who knows, what you try to make some money, and they're not really sure, they don't have a specific avenue to go down, say, a specific type of science or mathematics or something like that. I would say that they'd probably, at this point in time, they'd be better off just, using that time, using that money for other things. Maybe, finding an apprenticeship, even traveling, getting a job in the field that you're thinking about doing, trying to start a business, something like that. You'd probably learn a lot more and it'd be a lot less expensive,
I think that's true. And for those who are still academically inclined, I think the way to do this right on the cheap is, pick an institution in a subject that you think is worthwhile. For example, economics. Look at the institution and see what courses are required for economics. Then go to a community college and pick up just those courses. So you can go to an employer and say, look, I don't have a 4-year degree. However, I have studied all of the things that lead to an economics major in most of the colleges in the United States. And I think we're getting to a point where employers are going to be very much more willing to listen to an argument like that.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about technology and how technology is being applied to learning? We both know Zach Slaylock, who came on earlier, and they're doing Praxis, some other alternative ways of education, things like that. I'm very interested in how this college debt bubble, when it does come to fruition, whatever happens, we have all these amazing technologies at our fingertips right now that we could be using to give amazing education practically free, or actually free, or I don't know, who knows what it would look like. But have you thought about that? Do you have any ideas about how this transition would happen, or maybe what education will look like in, say, 10 years?
Yeah, I've actually thought a lot about that, and I would imagine that 10 years down the road, maybe more than that, maybe 20 or 30, we're going to see colleges, a lot of them, transformed into what you might call academic hotels. That is, the college provides housing, it provides laundry service, it provides the cafeteria, this kind of thing, perhaps the technology infrastructures, you've got internet and all this nonsense. But then the faculty themselves may well not be affiliated with the university at all. That I can teach from my office here at home, and I have done, people all over the planet. Lecturing like we're doing now. I have online materials, all this sort of thing. And it would be an easy matter, 20 years down the road, for universities to be contracting with professors like me. And when you do that, you go back to something that looks a lot like the original Greek model, where you get a bunch of people who get together and they hire a philosopher to come and lecture them. And that's what he does, right? There isn't this university superstructure sitting on top of him.
Right. That's very interesting. I was talking with some people about the different models, and one of them that it's not very big now, but there is a group of people that are putting on this thing that I think they call it a dojo. And basically what it is, it's for people that want to get into, I guess you would call it internet marketing type of stuff. And they all rent out a room in a house, and there's somebody who is a successful internet marketer there, and they have all the things that they need, the learning, the books and the videos and stuff like that, and they will coach them. They will assign each of them. That's kind of part of the rent. And they all learn all these skills together, whether it's copywriting or coding or email marketing, all these different types of things. And they go, and he actually assigns them tasks and stuff. So I thought that's a kind of interesting way of doing it as well.
It is. I think there's a certain type of student that works very well with. I think we'll always have a different type of student who needs the physical faculty member in front of him to provide incentive. Right. That, if I don't have, Professor X telling me I have to be in the room, sitting down here, doing the work, and he's going to check me absent or not, I don't have an incentive to do work. So to that extent, I think there'll always be room for the physical professor in the front of the classroom. Mm-hmm. However, I think it's going to be that portion of the market's going to be shrinking, for the next 10, 20 years.
I think it's a real shame because I enjoyed being in academia when I was there, when I was learning, and I used to go to all kinds of economics classes as well, and on my free time. So I actually enjoyed that type of stuff, and I feel like all these policies and this easy money has really screwed up a good situation. There is a need for these types of people that just concentrate on academic endeavors. So I think it's a real shame.
Yeah, and you're touching on something I think is worth noting, and that is, we look at things like childhood and early development majors that pay nothing. That major is really not worth, if the amount that you're going to earn is not worth what it's going to cost you to get the degree. And so we look at that, we say, well, that just isn't right. What is more important in the world than having people who are well-trained and, taking care of our kids? And this is the sort of thing that you learn in these majors. And I think the thing we have to keep in mind is that if wages for someone in childhood or early development are low, it's not necessarily because society doesn't value this thing. Instead, it can be, and likely is in my opinion, it's the fact that there are so many people who are willing and able to do that it drives the price down. Conversely, there are very few people who are able to do statistics well, and that drives the prices of those jobs up. So when we look at the wages that you get from these various things, it's not a value necessarily that society is placing on the job itself, but rather a reflection of the number of people who are willing and able to do that thing. And so consequently, what happens in a free market is that when you see low wages in childhood development, I as a student come in and say, well, I shouldn't study that. I should study statistics where the wages are really high. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly the market doing what it should be doing, which is diverting our scarce resources into the production of things that we need, that not many people are doing, and out of the production of things that we've got plenty of people willing to do.
Right. Yeah, more of a pull type of system rather than a push.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, do you think that the United States at least can get back into that? I mean, how would that path look,
Yeah, so I think we're starting to move in that direction. Okay. And what holds us up, of course, as you referred to earlier, is the regulations. So when you have things like the government requiring you to have a license to do certain jobs, and to get the license, you have to go to a college, and that college has to be accredited, then all of a sudden that all of those government requirements restrict entrepreneurs' abilities to come up with new solutions to these problems. However, even with the regulations that are in place, there's enough play that we do have entrepreneurs like, Zach Slayback and Isaac Morehouse with Praxis coming up with alternatives that they put out, and they let the market decide. If people find Praxis to be a valuable thing, people will flock to it and they'll start doing it instead of doing college, and Praxis and things like it will survive. Mm-hmm. If not, people will choose against it, and entrepreneurs are going to have to come up with something else.
Right. Yeah, and another thing is just that, because of the regulation and because it's been so removed from the market, academia, I guess whoever you generalize in that way. A lot of the ideas have been sort of moved from the market that they become very wacko to people, right? It's just not common sense, It's just because they're able to exist in this kind of realm that that it's not usable in real life, and
right.
So anyways, I think that's very damaging, And then when other young people who have never had a job and are completely removed from the market themselves learn these things, it's a very damaging ideology,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you're right. Zach Slayback has a beautiful quote that I'm going to completely butcher because I don't have it in front of me. But it's something to the effect of, academics are people who largely dislike markets, mostly because they've been completely insulated from them.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what you have.
Mm-hmm.
Academics tend, on average, to be very skeptical of market forces. Not all of them, particularly the economists, myself included. But by the same token, they have not been required to respond to market forces the way the rest of the world does.
Yeah. Okay. Now, so, like I was saying, we talked about some of the things you might want a college degree for, and then the other ones, you might want to not think about that. But what if maybe you're not thinking about going to college, but you see this big college debt bubble in front of you? Can you think of some other ways maybe that people can maybe benefit from this? I mean, are there some things that might, markets that might go up as the college goes down, or are there some things that you think are ripe for kind of innovation or disrupting type of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think I would imagine for-profit ventures are something that are going to become more popular and more accepted in the marketplace. We got a bad start with for-profit colleges, but again, that's part of what entrepreneurs do. They throw solutions out there, and the solutions that don't work, people walk away from, and they die. But I think that sort of thing, going back to Praxis as an example, is something that is going to be a growing market, is going to be a growing market segment. Things like Praxis, who's giving you internship opportunities along with online courses, and then other sorts of ventures that you can imagine, something like a Khan Academy that is for profit. So you pay for the courses, but you also get some evaluation or stamp on your forehead at the end that says you've done these things. So I would expect to see a lot of that. Another interesting thing, and this is coming from, of all places, traditional academia. Traditional universities are just now starting to toy with funding education through equity rather than debt. That is. If I want to pay for my college education, the way I normally do is I go and I take on loans. That's the debt. This new thing is to issue what in effect amounts to stock in yourself. So I go to the college, I say, okay, you're going to give me my college education for free, quote unquote. Let's say it costs $80,000. So I pledge in return 10% of my income for the next 15 years. So whatever I earn, be it high or be it low, you get 10% of it. And, some just like it is with stocks, right? Some students will generate more of a return, some will generate less of a return. But on average, as long as it pays for the student on average, that's good. That's an interesting way to think about paying for college. And again, it's something an entrepreneur has figured out and thrown out in the marketplace, and we'll see whether it floats or not.
It sounds very interesting thing to consider. So we talked about kind of the profit incentive that we just went over. So let's go over that. I'm sure a lot of people, listening to this podcast are not afraid of the word, profit, but there is a lot of rhetoric out there saying that, a lot of the problems with the university system is that, the profit, right? Like you're saying about the greedy bankers or the greedy college president. What can you say about that? As far as profit goes, what role does that play in a university?
That's wow. So your question leads to like a 2-hour discussion,
right?
And maybe the right place to start is in fixing a misconception about profit. And the misconception comes from people who look at dollars and think that dollars are what matters. So if you and I have a transaction, you give me something, I give you $20. Someone from that perspective would look at this and say that you won and I lost because you got $20 and I lost $20. And the $20 is not the issue. The issue is actually the exchange of the goods and services, right? We can both walk away better off. I, because I got this thing that I wanted, you, because you got this $20. So with that in the back of our minds, imagine if I described to you a person who contributes more value to society than he consumes of society's resources. And if you describe a person like that, most people say, well, yeah, that's exactly the kind of person we want living in society. It would be great if everybody were like that they contributed more to society than they consumed of society's resources. But in a market, when you produce more value than you consume of society's resources, you accumulate dollars. That's what the dollars are. They're a tally that the society owes you something because you have consumed less than what you produced. So seen in that perspective, a college that generates a profit is a college that is providing more value to society than it is consuming of society's resources. Far from being a bad thing, that's exactly the kind of college we want.
Right. Yeah, I just definitely wanted to go over that because I'm sure that we're going to hear a lot of this kind of, like we're saying, this rhetoric in the future, and they're going to there are going to be some people that are going to be saying that, it's the price is being so high is because of the profit motive, and that we need to go ahead and take over the entire college system. I can already see this coming.
Right, because everything we take over ends up being a lower price, right? Or the healthcare, the airlines, or whatever it is, right?
Right.
So the thing that keeps prices low is not the government taking them over. That actually has a reverse effect. What keeps prices low is competition. Mm-hmm. Because if I've got a college that is, let's say it's a college that's greedy, I want to make as much money as I possibly can. What prevents me from doing that is the college down the street that also wants your dollars. And if it's going to get your dollars, or charge a lower tuition, which requires that I charge a lower tuition to attract you back. And that competition is what keeps prices low. So if you're asking for an appropriate role for government in this whole scheme of things, the appropriate role of government is to promote competition, which generally means doing less. That is, government doing less rather than government doing more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. So what do you think about, once this realization we were talking about at the beginning of the interview, what is that going to look like? Are there going to be a lot of people that just suddenly realize, I have this big debt, and I have this piece of paper, but I can't find a job, and it hasn't meant anything to me. I know, for instance, my degree, I don't think any person has ever asked me for it, ever. So,
Right.
I don't know. Yeah. Do you have any ideas about what that might look like?
Well, I don't know. Yeah. I think, I think there are a couple of things that are going to happen. One, of course, we discussed already, is that the businesses are going to start to realize that having college degree largely doesn't matter, with exceptions. The STEM majors being exception. I think another thing that's going to happen is we're going to reach a point here rather quickly, 5 to 10 years, where we have a large number of college graduates who just can't get employed because they've got majors that are just not marketable, and those college graduates are going to start to declare bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. And then when the numbers get large enough, they're going to turn to the federal government and say, this isn't fair. And the federal government is going to say, you're quite right, this isn't fair, so we're going to forgive your college debt. Right. And to anyone who knows nothing about markets at all, that phrase sounds wonderful. We're going to forgive their debt. You can't forgive a debt. All you can do is force someone else to pay it. And what the government means is we're going to force people who didn't go to college, or who went to college and did pay off their loans, to pay off the loans for these other people who went and studied something they had no business studying.
Right. Yeah, and another aspect that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about, but it's worth kind of putting in the picture is, you already have these forgiveness programs, and what do you have to do in order to get to the forgiveness? Well, you have to work for a government-sanctioned institution or the government itself for, I believe, 10 years or 12 years or something like that. And then you pay a minimal amount, and then they'll forgive your entire loan. So, another thing is that there was a bill a year ago or so, if I remember correctly, that they wanted to restrict people with outstanding student loan debts passports. So I think that there are a number of ways. I mean, maybe they can, quote unquote, forgive the loan. I mean, we all know that means, somebody's paying for it somewhere. but they might put strings attached. You might say, well, yeah, as long as you work for us, or you join the military, or you do, that could be another outcome, or say you can't leave.
Yeah, and notice that this starts to look really bad.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing, you're taking a whole swath of young people and saying to them, look, you should go to college. Okay, we'll go to college. And you can't pay for it, so now your life belongs to the federal government.
Right.
And furthermore, we're not going to let you leave.
Yeah. No, it's pretty crazy. And so, anyway, I've been looking at it for a while, and I'm just kind of amazed that maybe it's because of the circles that I run in, or that you usually associate with. To me, it seems obvious, like it's for a while now. It's like, no, it's not the best option for most people is to go to college anymore.
Right.
But it still seems to be a lot of people that are lining up. So, we'll see how long this lasts. I mean, do you have any ideas on that? I mean, are you I thought that a year ago we were seeing a less amount of people that were joining college, right? Because this is going to be the main thing to look out for. Is going to be the new class, how big the newest class is. If that starts dropping off a cliff, then they're going to have a big problems. If they have less new entrants. Do you have any idea? I mean, I know we hate to put dates and stuff on predictions, but do you have any idea about how long that could last? Or are you already seeing it happen now?
Yeah, I'm starting to see the beginnings of it. I've been seeing for the past, and if you ask faculty at most colleges, they'll generally tell you about the same story, that over the past 10 years, there's been this decline in student quality. Students today just aren't as well prepared. They don't study as hard. They're not willing to work as much as they were 10 years ago. And I think part of what's going on here is that colleges are constantly pushing to increase their student enrollment. All of them, right? Faster than the population growth. Well, if all the colleges are growing faster than the population is growing, then the only way you can get more students is to start admitting students who actually don't belong in college. And that means dumbing down your entrance requirements, the standards once the students are there. And so consequently, you get these students who just are not performing as graduates, not performing at the level that students were performing 10, 20 years ago. So the question is, how long before employers start to notice this is a real problem? And my guess is simply a guess. I would be surprised if it's less than 5 years from now, and I'd be equally surprised if it was more than 20. So probably somewhere in there.
Right. Well, I agree with you. As far as the I see it not just within university students. But I think that there's probably a number of variables that go into, I guess you'd say, like the millennials not being prepared. From a lot of the millennials that I've met, that I've talked to about, what they want to do in the future and what they're trying to do. I just find a lot of them do not have the kind of work ethic and know what it's going to take, especially to be entrepreneurial. That it's not going to be easy, and it's very tough a lot. The world, the life is not nice to you because, I think that, just kind of like this college, everybody's let in, everybody gets A's, everybody pats you on the head, everybody gets a trophy, whatever. People have had this for very long, for, their whole lives. And, I think it's going to be devastating, to a lot of people, in the upcoming decades, especially, you're going to go and compete with, some Chinese businessman or an Indian businessman or something. They definitely do not have that mentality, So.
Right. And I think to say something in defense of millennials, I'm not of the opinion that they're any less hardworking than any other, group of people that age going back through history. I do think that there's one big thing that's different is that they live in a society in which the government more and more with each passing year tells people what they can't do. And so if you're a young guy, 17, 18 years old, you're leaving high school, you're thinking what comes next. If the government weren't so oppressive in telling people what they can't do, you might be thinking about things, well, I could go out and start a lawn mowing service, or I could, I'm going to buy a car and get involved in that Uber business, right? Or all these sorts of things that are open to me because I have the freedom to make choices and to do things. But what we have instead now is a government that most often in the name of protecting consumers puts all sorts of regulations on entrepreneurs such that it is really difficult to be an entrepreneur today. If I want to start a business, if I don't have access to some good accountants and some good lawyers, I'm probably setting myself up for failure, because at some point, some government official is going to come and shut me down because I don't have the appropriate permission from the local authority to earn a living.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I think that there's been a very good discussion about, what's going on here. I'm going to put a lot of stuff in the show notes about some statistics and stuff like that. But if there's somebody that is thinking about, maybe they're at the age of thinking about going to college, or maybe somebody's thinking of going back to college, is there any specific piece of advice, that you would give them? What would you say to somebody in those shoes?
Yeah, I would say keep this in mind. You are not buying a college degree. You are buying a college major. It's a very, very different thing. And look very carefully at the employment prospects, at the average salaries for the particular undergraduate major you're looking at. If you pick well, you can do very well for yourself. If you pick poorly, you're going to be saddled with this useless degree for the rest of your life.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that that's very good advice. So thank you very much for coming on the podcast with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Have a good one. What do you guys think about that? Anthony has seen this college debt bubble go on for a long time. We've given you some other examples of things that you might want to do other than go your standard route of college. But what do you think? Let us know. Let other people know maybe what you've done or what you would recommend to somebody who is thinking about going to college now. So thanks again for watching and listening. And before I take off, I am going to read a short review that I had, and that was from Brandon, and he says, the perfect podcast for international entrepreneurs. This is a must listen to for all international business owners. And that is Brandon from theblogmillionaire.com. And I recommend checking it out. If you're into blogging, things like that, definitely going and checking out his website. He's done very well for himself. I talked to him about that. And so anyways, we appreciate his review. And if you want me to read your review, then please go to iTunes and post it there, and I will read it on the next Borderless podcast. So thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us for the Borderless podcast, traveling, investing, and living beyond borders.